Special hi to your Patreon. Shout out to Nerdferg. Welcome, Howler. All right, everybody, let's wrap up officially this time 2020 with my actual final review. I know I said a couple times that it was my final video. Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence, and that would be Holy Sister. Now, this is a trilogy that I started a few months back. I think back in August, maybe, is when I reviewed Red Sister. And for whatever reason, it just took me this long to finally get to Holy Sister. I wanted to wrap up the series because I actually really enjoyed Red and Gray Sister. I thought they were excellent. Red Sister was a fantastic introduction to Mark Lawrence's writing style, his character work, his world building, and Gray Sister kind of improved on everything. And I love Holy Sister as well. So I thought this was a fantastic finale to the series and really has me interested in reading A Girl in the Stars to see what else he has to offer in this world as that series takes place afterwards. And I also want to try other things that he's written, Prince of Thorns, the other books that he's written, because I love his writing style so much in this. Now, I'm not sure that I'll get the exact same thing in his previous stories, but his writing style really does the trick for me here, and let's talk about it. So if you've read the series up to this point, Holy Sister obviously takes place immediately after Gray Sister, but also takes place 3 years after Gray Sister. So there's essentially two timelines going on throughout this book. Not really, it's telling two simultaneous stories. They're both following Nona. She is your main POV. She's your only POV. But you're getting the story of present day, which is 3 years after, when she's in Holy Class. She's trying to determine what class she will actually follow officially when she becomes a full-fledged sister of the convent. But also you get, in between, it's basically every other chapter kind of bounces between them. You get 3 years prior, which is immediately after Gray Sister. So you're following Zol and Nona and their whole quest, basically continuing that story immediately while also telling a story beyond what happened there. Now, this was definitely a narrative choice that I didn't really see coming. I was expecting to jump straight into Holy Sister and just pick up where we left off in Gray Sister, and that's not really what happened at all. So that kind of caught me off guard, but I think Mark Lawrence did a very good job of actually wrapping everything up nicely and bringing these two simultaneous timelines almost together. So he told these two timelines of Nona progressing to this present day timeline very well, and that seemed like that would be something that's kind of a risk to do because you could kind of lose your audience if you're telling almost two different stories at the same time. But he did it very well, and I enjoyed it a lot. Now, Nona is hands down one of my favorite protagonists that I've read in all of 2020. She is a fantastic character. Yes, she's very good at a lot of things, and occasionally maybe, gets one up on everybody a little bit too often. But she is just such a well-rounded and heartfelt character. She really fights for everyone around her. She desperately wants friends and wants to be close to people around her, and she's kind of shielded herself away from people because of her upbringing and kind of, where she was at when Red Sister started, when she was kind of like in fighting pits and she was kind of an orphan and not treated very well. So she's got sort of trust issues as well, but she's learned that through this trilogy, she's grown a lot, not only in age, because she's grown, I think it's 5 or 6 years time span. I think she was like 13 or 14 when they started. She's about 18 or 19 now. She's grown a lot as a person and as a character in this world. She's also a total badass, so I just love watching her destroy people, to be quite honest. But as far as the plot goes, that is the basic structure. You're telling this three-year different split timeline, and you get a lot of things filled in. Like any questions that you do have of the present day, we're like, where is this person? What happened to that person? It will be answered because you are getting that other timeline. And what Mark Lawrence did here was actually kind of genius because they tie in so well at the end. And there are things that, much like Brandon Sanderson would do, where he leaves you breadcrumbs, even on like the first page of a book of a series, and then by the end of it, you realize that the answer was there all along, or there were, answers in front of you the entire time. You just didn't know that to pick up on them yet. Mark Lawrence did that here, and it worked so well that there are things that happen in book one, even as early as the prologue, that are wrapped up in Holy Sister that you would have just read it in Red Sister and been like, all right, that's a cool line, but it comes back full circle in Holy Sister, and that was awesome. So beyond Nona for the character work, there are a lot of side characters that are excellent in this as well. I did mention it in Grey Sister, which I think had the best character work for the side characters. Abbess Glass was excellent and continues to be excellent in this book. Zol is super interesting and cool as well. Nona by far though is like the peak of this series, but he just did such a great job of creating these additional characters that obviously don't get POVs. They don't get a lot of screen time, as it were, because this is very much just Nona's story and it's through her POV. But even characters like Ara, who is kind of the other featured character in Bound, which is the short story or novella. It's a 16,000 word sort of bridge novel between Grey Sister and Holy Sister, which you should absolutely read before you read this if you haven't. But that tells a great sort of romance and murder mystery story that I wasn't really expecting. It was actually pretty good. One of the better novellas that I've read. But that sort of bridges a little bit of the timeline and sets up a few scenes or a few threads to follow in this book. So you definitely want to read that before you get into this one. But it really made me like and appreciate Ara as a character. So hats off to Mark Lawrence for writing that to kind of bridge the gap here. As far as the prose, I've mentioned this since book one. I absolutely love Mark Lawrence's writing style. It's both poetic but straightforward. So it's not like the high end of purple prose of like a Robin Hobb, but it's also not, totally straightforward like Brandon Sanderson. It strikes a good balance between those, and there are certain lines that are just, they really hit you, and the guy can just write the hell out of some of these characters. So some of the scenes in this, the dialogue is beautiful, and I've actually stopped to just sort of think like, wow, that was just a gorgeous line of dialogue. When it comes to world building, and this is really the main critique that I have throughout the story, it's not that it doesn't take away a whole lot, but the world building is rather minimal. You don't get a lot of either explanation or description of things, so it's kind of hard to picture stuff. And I mentioned that back in Red Sister, like walking the path, which is sort of like the magic system. It's really abstract, and it's hard to imagine or picture in your mind what this even looks like. He's definitely grown from Red Sister to Holy Sister, explaining it a little bit more, and it's still very, very interesting and fun to read about, but I still don't know what the hell it looks like. It's definitely very different than being given something like Allomancy, and here are the rules, here's how this works, here's what metal does what, there you go. This is very abstract, very unique. World building would be like the one main knock on the series. I absolutely love this series, so it's not even like, I would highly recommend this. I'm not saying don't read it because there's a lack of world building. It's just not, I guess, the most important thing to this story, so he doesn't explain a lot about the world, to be honest. Finally, the pacing. So I think these books are paced wonderfully, and I was a little caught off guard because of kind of like the two quasi timelines going on, but it was paced really, really well, so you're not taken out of it. It's sort of like a well-paced flashback like the Greatcoats did, for example. So you're following, the present day Nona, and then next chapter will say, 3 years earlier, and you're kind of, it's basically two running movies at the same time, and then they eventually do at least certain plot points converge and are sort of intertwined and wrap up for the finale, and that's super awesome. You get a ton of great reveals, things that, like I said, were set up from book one throughout book two, things that caught me off guard I was not expecting at all. There are some great surprises in this, and it's really awesome when you finish this to go back to, I'm not saying I'm going to go reread it, but just jumping back to some of the scenes in Red Sister or some of the paragraphs or like the prologue, or there's things in Red Sister that you're going to want to go back and reread, and you're like, oh wow, that's what that was. And it was set up from the beginning. Incredible. I thought these books were fantastic. I really thought that this wrapped up the series nicely. I guess the only other real negative would be, I feel like as much as I liked the ending, it wrapped up a little bit quick. So I felt like it could have been a little bit longer. but it's sort of nitpicky. You might not have an issue with it. I like the ending. I just thought it could have been drawn out a little bit better. That's all. I will absolutely read more Lark Lawrence. I will absolutely read more Mark Lawrence in the future, whether that be I have Prince of Thorns right somewhere, and then The Girl in the Stars. I might just continue on with The Girl in the Stars before jumping back to some of his other works. So like and subscribe. As always, do hit up Patreon if you want to support the channel financially. That is, of course, always optional, but always appreciated. Definitely jump in Discord, though, or let me know in the comments down below your favorite Mark Lawrence book. If you read Book of the Ancestor, what you liked about it, what you didn't like. Please let me know your thoughts because I love talking about these books. So until next time, everybody, keep reading.